just a bus volume. ठीक है तो ठीक है
ଥିଲେ ତ ସେମିତି ଚେଞ୍ଜ ଠିକ ଅଛି
Good afternoon. Today we'll talk about the investment decision under certainty. The last part of this particular module, we'll talk about the something called a social cost benefit. Well, till now we have discussed the various kinds of projects, project management techniques, project monitoring and control techniques. However, till now, whatever we were discussing, these are all relating to how the private enterprise they evaluate the projects, and obviously, when the private enterprise they evaluate the project, the main concern for them is what is the value, economic value that is being added. But when governments try to evaluate a project, the economic value is not the only concern that drives their decision making. So the obviously estimation of cost and benefit is at the core of any economic analysis, and it is a natural way in which individuals and the commercial enterprises they take decision before deciding whether they will invest their money in that particular enterprise or not. But when we talk about governments and other multilateral agencies, when they decide about the policy, I mean the projects, the economic wealth generation is not the only aspect that they are looking at. This is not their sole guiding criteria, because apart from economic analysis, they are more interested in like what are the benefits and what are the costs that will accrue to the society as a whole. So we'll talk about that particular aspect in this class. Now you see, the estimation of this cost and benefit obviously is at the core, but when we talk about this social cost benefit, now the to estimate the gains that are accruing to the social cost benefit I mean the social cost and benefit, this SCBA or the social cost benefit analysis is used now, because this is based on the I mean it's a particular branch of economics which is I mean it talks about the welfare economics. Now what is this welfare economics? The welfare economic analyzes the public decisions which impact the economic interest of more than one person or society at a large. So when we're talking about public decisions that is going to affect the I mean the entire society as a whole, this kind of economics or the decision making falls under this welfare economics, and we use this social cost benefit analysis to do that. Now what are the issues that we're trying to address in using this SCBA? Number one may be that what are the social choices or the decisions that are best when the available when the available choice will affect welfare of different sections of society, or even oppositely. Is it going to affect it positively or is it going to affect it negatively? For example, let us say the construction of a dam. Now the construction of a dam will affect let us say the material market, the labor market, it will affect them positively. But what about the people who are losing out on their land due to the acquisition by the government, or the farmers whose fields will be flooded because of the dam? So there are several kinds of stakeholders here. Some may be positively impacted, some may be negatively impacted. So when we're talking about evaluating a project from this particular point of view, so we have to take care of all these stakeholders, and the simple cost benefit analysis used by the corporate sector might not be sufficient to deal with this kind of a problem. Now the corporate sectors deal with CBA, that is cost benefit analysis, whereas the governments, they deal with the SCBA. So you have to segregate between the cost benefit analysis vis-a-vis social cost benefit analysis. So CBA is being used by the corporates, whereas the SCBA is used by the governments and the other development agencies. Now, if you talk about there is something called a market efficiency. Now the objective of any economic system, it is always to, we all understand, the objective of any economic system is always to generate wealth, welfare and employment for the society. Now now if a farm is operating within a particular environment, the job of the farm is to generate the income and wealth for that particular society in which it is, in the environment in which it is operating. Now the economic systems, they use economic resources, and every economic resource has multiple claimant. And we know that in India, we're talking about a scenario where economic resources are not plentifully available. So what you have to do is, because for every resource you have multiple claimants, you have to allocate it to only that particular source where, which will give you the best benefit out of it. So the allocation takes utmost importance here in this in our case, where the resources are scarce. Now some what happens is, the most of the times this allocation is being done through the market mechanism, and governments don't have to interfere in this allocation of resources, because see, the corporates which are driven by the economic wealth, they will ensure that every resource that is being allocated to them is being optimally used, and only when it is optimally used, they can generate the best possible value out of it. So normally when we're talking about the allocation of resources, it can be done through the open market mechanism, and government really don't have to interfere in it. But sometimes the what happens is, when we're talking about the market allocation, the free market, using the market for allocation, that sometimes that the individuals and institutions only act with their private self-interest, and their private self-interest is basically the maximization of the individual's wealth, or maximization of the corporation's wealth, at the cost of probably the environment, or at the cost of the society. So at that point of time, so the corporate entities, they are at loggerheads with the societal interest, and those are the point of time when the government has to intervene, and government has to come into the picture to redistribute the resources, or to ensure that resources are available for all the quarters. Now so basically what happens is, when the organizations, when they talk about their private interest and at the cost of the societal interest, the governments will have to take care of the societal interest by appropriately allocating the resources to appropriate quarters. Now which means that maybe majority of times the market mechanism for allocation of resources will ensure that the resources will be efficiently distributed. But when this kind of conflict arises, then probably the allocation of resources might not be efficient one. So then government will have to step in. So when we talk about this efficient resource distribution of the market efficiency, so what does it mean? It really is trying to tell us that it is an efficient outcome in the market is where all the agents have maximized their personal gains and no further gain is mutually possible. Which means that if you redistribute wealth, you take the wealth from, the resource from one party and give it to the other party, you are not going to get anything out of it. So this is the best scenario possible where all the resources, the scarce resources are allocated in such a way that every the total gain has been totally maximized, and no further thing can be done out of it. Now, which basically, what is the meaning of this statement is that No one can be made better without making anybody else worse off. That means if I have to benefit, I have to sacrifice somebody else's interest, then only I can become beneficial. So without making anybody worse off, you cannot benefit. So that is the scenario when we say that the resource allocation is the best one and the markets are efficiently doing it. Now, whereas inefficient allocation is the one where the gains from your market have not been fully exploited and exhausted, and there exists a potential for further improvement. So basically what happens is the market, if we're dependent on the market for allocation, it might so happen that there is still a further scope which is being left out. So if you redistribute the resources, probably that can be exploited and the total value that can be generated out of it can be exhausted. So this kind of, if there is a scope for that, then we say that the allocation of resources is not efficient. Now, when we have this kind of a scenario, there is potential for further development. Okay, and many times what happens is, now it is in the ideal interest of the economy, any economy, that this potential for further development has been fully exploited. Now, why it is not done? It is due to a variety of reasons. Now, some of the reasons maybe, let us say, you can talk about huge requirement of fund is there. You don't have the fund. You don't have access to technology, so you are not able to allocate resources. Probably it takes a long period for completion. So saying technically, we say that it is a long gestation period, and we don't have time for that. So, based on these things, we usually fail to allocate the resources, so leading to the inefficient market allocation. Then, what are the events where we have these market failures? Now, the market failure, when we talk about a market failure, usually we talk about in the context of the social economic efficiency, where we talk about this marginal social benefit, the marginal social benefit, and marginal social cost and the benefit marginal social benefit. Now, when we talk about this, what is this marginal social cost and what is this marginal social benefit? You see, when we're talking about a project, a particular project, you talk about the cost, you talk about the benefit. Now, when I'm talking about the cost or the benefit, there is a benefit. In terms of benefit, there could be a let us say the private benefit, there could be the external benefit. That means whatever is not directly experienced. For example, if a company is investing in a particular project, means the benefit that accrues to the company is the private benefit. Apart from that, there are other benefits that might accrue to other stakeholders, so those are called as the external benefit. Similarly, you have the marginal cost, the marginal external cost, and you have the marginal private cost. So in the cost of the project or the cost of the machine is the cost which is accruing to the company, so that is the private cost. Apart from that, for example, if you are using that particular project or the machine and you are polluting the environment, that is being borne by the society, so that is called the external cost. So in any case, you will have the marginal private cost. Now, there is a marginal private cost and there is a marginal external cost. Now, if you add up these things, you will get the marginal social cost. The marginal social cost. Similarly, here you will have the marginal private benefit and you will have marginal external benefit. So if you add up these things, you will get the marginal social benefit. Now, ordinarily, in equilibrium, under efficiency, these marginal social cost and benefits, they are they're equivalent. So they are, let us say, in equilibrium. So there is efficiency in the distribution. Now, overall efficiency will always require that the marginal social cost is equal to the marginal social benefit. Now, Now, but for example, what is this marginal social cost and benefit that we are talking about here? The marginal social benefit is the benefit in absence of any of these distortions. Okay, so the point is, when these are same, you talk about the equilibrium point. uh, Whenever there is this condition arises that the marginal social benefit, I mean social cost, exceeds the marginal social benefit, then what will happen is that the production will have to be, and the other way around, that is marginal social benefit will exceed the marginal social cost. If this happens, you go on producing, the production can be expanded. So because additional benefits is accruing at additional cost, so you increase the cost, you are getting additional benefit, so go on producing. But whereas the opposite thing happens, when the marginal social cost is greater than the marginal social benefit, then the production should be decreased so as to avoid the marginal inefficiency, because you are going on adding cost, but the benefit is not accruing to the society. So basically you so what I'm trying to tell you is, if we are not we know that these are the conditions, but we are not stopping the production or we are not increasing the production in the other. If a marginal social cost is more than the benefit and I'm still going on producing, or the marginal social benefit is more than the cost, but I'm not venturing into the production in that particular area, then probably we say that there is a market failure in that particular case. Now, when we talk about market failure, you see, in every competitive market, the private sector always invest in projects which have a high NPV. Now, the other day we talked about this NPV. So NPV is basically the the gross present value, the present value of the total benefits minus the present value of the cost. So when we talk about that thing, the private sector will always invest in a project which is having positive NPV. So what will happen is, as a result, there will be no unproductive projects which would be taken up by the private firms or the individuals, and this obviously is a rational decision making, and this leads to the greater economic benefit of the society. Now, which means that the private sector is capable of allocating its own resources without the intervention of the government. But in real situations, we know that there is no economic environment, no economic system can be called as a perfectly competitive one, and the allocation of resources is absolutely perfect. So the what will happen is, the economic decisions, there is nothing called a perfect market, there is nothing called a perfect competitive market, perfect competition. So it will ensure that even the private enterprises, they will fail to properly, efficiently allocate the resources. So that the economic decisions that will result when there is an efficient allocation of resources are termed as the market failure. Okay, so I was just trying to explain to you that, suppose marginal cost is more than the marginal benefit, but we are still allocating resources for producing the good, then this is a market failure. Or the marginal social benefit is more than the cost. That means if I invest more, the more amount of benefit will accrue to the society, but I am not allocating resources to that particular area, then it is a case of a market failure. So what I'm trying to tell you is, the economic decisions that result in this inefficient allocation of resources is called the market failure. And the what will the consequence? The consequence is that the society will suffer as a whole, and the market outcomes will be also inefficient. Now, the market inefficiency, how will it look like? It will manifest itself in the form of either underproduction or overproduction of goods and services. Just like this case I was talking about, this case of here you will have, if you don't produce here, here you are required to stop. Here you are required to stop when marginal social cost is more than marginal social benefit. You are required to stop production of that particular good. But if you don't stop production, then you will be overproducing. Similarly, when marginal social benefit is more than the marginal social cost and you are not allocating the resources for producing more, then there will be underproduction. So the inefficiency will manifest itself in the form of either underproduction or overproduction of various goods and services. Now, basically two aspects of this market failure is one is the demand side failure and the other one is the supply side failure. Now, what will happen in a demand side failure? In case of a demand side failure, the demand curve fails to incorporate it will, the demand curve will fail to incorporate the full willingness of the customer to pay, and whereas in case of supply side failure, the supply curve will fail to incorporate the full cost of production. Okay, so the willingness of the of the clients to pay and the willingness of the and the satisfaction that the customer gets from consuming one thing, that will be the demand curve and the supply curve will fail to capture that thing. So this is what will happen when you talk about the market failure. Now, why can there be market failure? There can be several reasons what we can talk about the reason for your market failure. One of the reason can be that the is market power, or basically the monopoly power of the producer or the monopoly power of the consumer. Now the producer monopoly will ensure that the price of goods are over and above the marginal quite over and above the marginal cost. Okay, it will also result in the lower output, okay, as compared to the output required for the equilibrium supply and demand. So when you have the monopoly power of the producer, then he will be able to price the goods and services well above the marginal cost. Okay, and also the it will result in the low, whatever, suppose the market requires on an average 1 lakh units per day, but you will produce less than 1 lakh units per day, so resulting in the increase in the prices of this thing. Why will it happen? Because we have failed to capture the marginal social benefit is lesser than the marginal social cost. Well, when we talk about the price rises when private enterprises, it is not just that they don't understand that the marginal social benefit is more than the cost, but there is a profit making motive for which the hoarding and all these things happen. So basically resulting in the market failure, where the price of the product shoots up. Okay, that is one aspect. The second aspect is your the externality. Now, what is an externality? The externality is that the conditions, when the cost or the benefit is not reflected in the market price. Okay, so the normally everything is reflected in the market price. Suppose what is reflected, the actual whatever you have spent cost, and plus the profit is the selling price. These are the two things that are available visible in the market price, but whatever is visible may not be the only cost or the only price of that particular item. So the externalities are the conditions when these kind of cost and benefit are not visible in the market price. Now the externalities can be positive or negative. Now the positive externalities will occur when the action of one party confers the benefit to the other party. I mean, and the benefiting party does not pay for the benefits. For example, let us say I'll talk about four aspects, four issues of the production side. I mean, two issues on the production side and two issues on the let us say consumption side. When we talk about the, let us say, the consumption side, now we'll talk about the positive one of the best example of the consumption externality is vaccination. Okay, I'm talking about the positive positive consumption externality. Now, the welfare of any person in a particular neighborhood, it does not only depend on whether he is vaccinated or not. It also depends on the other people of the neighborhood, whether they are vaccinated or not. Because unless they are vaccinated, the contagious disease will spread. For example, take the case of the COVID case. Now, does it really matter that you have only taken the vaccine? If the people around you have not taken the vaccine, then it does not matter whether you have taken the vaccine. But ultimately, you will probably catch. Now, the case of the negative external consumption is could be the welfare of any person in a particular neighborhood doesn't depend only on his avoidance of a. If you avoid riding a noisy motorcycle in your neighborhood, so that it will reduce the air pollution, noise pollution, all these things. But your neighbor rides a noisy motorbike. It pollutes a lot. It does not follow the emission norms. So ultimately, you will also be affected because of that. So the point is, when we talk about these negative consumption externalities, these are created basically when the consumption leads to external cost on others. Okay. For example, just now we said that the if somebody is riding a noisy motorbike in your locality, then the cost is being borne by others. Or for that matter, let us talk about the smoking. Suppose somebody else is smoking in your vicinity, then you also are inhaling that particular fume, so poisonous fume. So that is called that is a negative consumption externality. Now, what is a positive personal externality? It is created when the external benefits are created for others in addition to the consumers. Okay, for example, this example of the immunization, as I said. So, when you are immunized, you are not only getting the benefit for yourself, you are also creating a good benefit for the others around you. Now that you are immune to, let us say, COVID, people around you, they have lesser chance of catching COVID from you. Okay, so that is called the positive consumption externality. Now, when we talk about this production externality, it could be it will arise. Let us say negative production externality will arise when the production of goods and the services that they will cause others to bear the associated cost, and these are in no way connected to either production or consumption. For example, the air and water pollution caused by the society, not the society, caused by the various factories. Now the main feature is that the producer or the consumer, they don't neither the producer pays for it nor the consumer pays for it, but it happens automatically, where when you are polluting the entire environment, it's a negative production externality. Neither the consumer is paying for it nor the producer is paying for it. Similarly, you have a positive production externality. It will arise when you the production processes the benefits are conferred, the positive benefits are conferred to both the producer as well as the other parties involved. For example, let us say you're talking about suppose beekeeping. You're talking about beekeeping. The beekeeping helps the pollination across the area. Wherever you have bee culture, then the pollination around the total area will improve. So, but was that the was that the benefit that the producer of honey that he intended? His intention was to culture bee so that he can get the honey out of it, but the entire agricultural community around that will benefit due to the good pollination. So this is something that is called a for example, hydroelectric generation in dam will affect this is a positive production externality. Okay, so these are the four production externalities that the point is, when you don't take into account these production externalities while allocating the resources and while talking about the marginal social cost and the marginal social benefit of a particular project, then obviously you are leading to a scenario where there will be inefficient allocation of resources. You can then talk about the public goods. Now, the public goods are the ones which will yield utility to people, and their consumption is essentially collective in nature. For example, there is a road, it's a public good. It's not my only for my own personal usage. Or there's a hospital, government hospital. It is not only for one individual's usage, it is for every other individual. So, you have facilities like schools, hospitals, roads, various kind of and services that are called as the public goods. Now, the consumers don't directly pay for them. For example, there is a road being constructed. Am I directly contributing to it? No, I'm not directly contributing to it. They have non-rival, their nature is non-rival, and they are also non-excludable. The public goods don't compete among themselves. Now, due to this unique nature of this public good, the competitive private markets, they will fail to generate the economically efficient output of the public goods. Now, see, in private enterprise, you compete for resources. Okay, a particular project, two agencies are trying to back the project, and once they get the project, they will ensure that the efficient utilization of resources is happening. But when we're talking about public goods, the private market, they will fail to actually economically, they are not efficient to utilize these public goods. This is one of the key reasons why this kind of services such as the hospital, the education, the law and order, and all this police department and all that, they're mostly in short supply. This we know there is in India, there is per capita availability of a doctor is less. The number of hospitals available per 1,000 people is less. The law and order keeping department, the police, so these are not efficiently utilized, cannot be efficiently utilized by the private enterprise. So that is, these are the reasons why there is inefficient allocation of resources due to the public good. Then again, the last point we talked about the 4 points. Last point is incomplete information. Now, the incomplete information is a situation. See, we talk about asymmetric information. Now, if a competitive market is to operate really efficiently, then the producer and the consumer, you have two ends of the competitive market. On the one end, you have the producer; the other end, you have the consumer. Now, when the producer as well as the consumer have full access to information, equal access to full and fair information, then we say that there is information symmetry of information between the producer and the consumer. If there is asymmetric information available, when there is different levels of information available to the producer and the consumer, we say that there is information asymmetry. Now, what is an example of an information asymmetry? Information asymmetry is probably, let us say, if we talk about the market, let us say the corporate people, the company people, they know about a particular decision and they are privy to that particular decision. But the public, until and unless it is announced, then the public is not privy to that particular information. So the corporate people, they know about it, the public doesn't know about it. So you say that there is a information asymmetry there. Now, what is the problem if there is an information asymmetry? The information asymmetry often leads to adverse selection, and because the competition is not then fair, because you don't have information and one party has information, the other party has no information or less information, then the competition is not fair. When the competition is not fair, then there will be adverse selection and of the various kinds of resources. This will automatically, what will it will do is it will do away with the economic efficiency, and it will lead to automatically market failure. Now, incomplete information also leads to your misallocation of resources, leading to non-establishment of equilibrium through price mechanism. So we'll never be at the equilibrium point when we talk about the demand and supply, because the producers have less information, or maybe the consumers have less information. So in that case, your the equilibrium will not arise, where the demand and supply, they're in equilibrium, and we discover a particular price, appropriate price for a particular good. So the incomplete information is the asymmetric information, or the information asymmetry, or the incompleteness of information will also cause the market failure. So the four causes of the market failure we have now discussed. We then talk about the various kinds of social cost benefit analysis projects. Now, the when we talk about the various kinds of social cost benefit analysis, it could be that we can use in decision making. The one could be the ex ante, which is before the project is undertaken. Now, the start of the project, this type of social cost benefit is basically the input for authorities that to make decision about the project regarding the continuous or otherwise about the quantum and timing of the allocation of the funds and resources. These are before the beginning, so you can do proper allocation. Whereas ex post basically means the it is undertaken after the completion of the project. Now, when you're doing it, the important point of ex post is that by the time this exercise is conducted, all the cost is already done. So we call them as the sunk cost. It is meaning that all the resources have already been allocated, have been used. Therefore, it will have actually this ex post SCBA will have no bearing on the current allocation, but it will provide a benchmark for the future decision making. So ex ante will it is continuous, and it can change the resource allocation from one quarter to other quarter. But ex post is done after the completion. So basically, what happens is this is something that will not help you for this particular project, but it will help you for the future project. Now, there is something called a in media res SCBA, that is you intervene within this thing. So it is planned and it is conducted midway. The ex ante is the prior to the this thing. Ex post is after the completion. In media is when the project is ongoing. In midway, then this kind of SCBA is undertaken. Now, what is the importance? What could be the in media res SCBA? It reveals whether or not you can continue to allocate the resources to wherever you are committed them. Okay, and whether number one is whether you are going to continue allocating the resources, or number two, whether you want to tinker with the allocation of resources, whether you want to reduce the allocation or you want to increase the allocation. This in media will tell you exactly whether number one, continue to allocate or not to allocate, totally stop the allocation. Number two, if you continue to allocate, whether you are going to change it, reduce it, or you are going to enhance it. That can be done through in media res. You can have the comparative SCBA. In comparative SCBA, it compares the findings of the ex ante along with the of the ex post, or in the previous three. It can make a comparison of the previous three. Why do you do it? You do it mainly for the purpose of evaluating the efficiency. So you can do it. You can also pinpoint the accuracy, the various assumptions by this comparative SCBA. So you can use that comparative thing to, I mean, decide on the allocation of resources. Now, here we talk about how do we do the social cost benefit analysis basically. Now, when we're talking about social cost benefit analysis, the first thing that you have to do is the define the policy. See, any project or any policy, it will always start with the definition of a problem. So you first have to define the problem. Have to define the problem or the opportunity. See, many times what can happen is, if this problem can also become an opportunity. To give you an example, There can be a scenario where there is a huge amount of rain resulting in recurrent floods. Okay, so the recurrent flood is a problem, but if you can, store that water, the excess water, then you convert that into an opportunity for irrigating in the future, or generating hydroelectricity. That is an opportunity. So the source which is your problem can become the source for your opportunity. So once the problem and the opportunities you have identified, whether this is you have identified this problem, whether you are going to convert it into an opportunity, once you have identified that, then you have to define the various policies, or you have to talk about the various project alternative solutions that you can or you can do identify, like it's a problem, what has to be done, it's an opportunity, how can we design policies to take advantage of that. So, and also you have to then design the counterfactuals. Now this is a new term for most of us. What is a counterfactual? Counterfactual is a typical situation when there is nothing you can do to, nothing to be done to tackle the problem or cash on the opportunity. Suppose there is a problem or there is an opportunity. You do nothing to either cash in on the opportunity or to tackle the problem. That scenario is called as the counterfactual. Now, that means you basically maintain this what status quo. No intervention from the government or the development and agency is needed. Now, this is also called as the do nothing or the do minimum scenario. Uh, so one thing we have to keep in mind, that counterfactuals, they will not remain static over time. Suppose right now we see that there is a small deviation being observed here. For example, suppose let us talk about the land acquisition problem. Now, for a project, you are acquiring land. Now, when you are acquiring land, you see that the resistance from the people of the village, the resistance is almost negligible. So then you do nothing. Okay. So but when the resistance is too high, then probably you will step in and do some corrective measures. So but everything said and done, the counterfactuals will not remain static. So now there is no resistance doesn't mean that there will be no resistance in the future. So you will have to constantly be on the lookout for these changes in the counterfactual situation. Now, the counterfactuals is to be characterized accurately, as it is the benchmark against which the cost and benefit of the policy alternative will be measured. Okay, the alternatives should include the best form of an economic perspective, even if they are not consistent with the stated objective of the policymaker. Right? So we have now identified the policy and the various counterfactuals. Then the next step is identify which section of the society gains and which section of the society loses. Suppose we talk about the irrigation project, okay, or talk about the railway project, okay. So suppose development of a particular area as a economic zone. Okay, so when we are talking about the this kind of things, there are always some section of the society which is affected, and there is always another section of society affected and which is not affected. Number one, when we're talking about the society which is affected, there could be people who are positively affected and which are the people which are negatively affected. Now, the positively affected party, they will stand to gain, and the negatively affected party will stand to lose, and that will lead to the friction, and that will lead to the problems that will arise in the future. Okay, then we'll talk about the the will identify the cost and the benefits of these impact categories, and then we classify them and select the measurement indicators. And the cost and benefits that has to be identified, because see, in India the governments are running programs on these universal immunization. For example, you might be knowing the case of this polio eradication vaccination, TB eradication. And very recently we saw this massive vaccination drive for COVID-19. Now, the impact should not be measured in terms of just the cost incurred by the government. Okay. Now, but by the cost savings by the population as a whole due to the increase in the various benefits. Now, so for example, if we talk about a project, let us say vaccination drive for the COVID-19. Now, if you just put the money spent by the government on that, then the cost could be very high. But then it is not just the cost. You have to look at what was the benefit derived out of it. The savings of the people, the life of the people. That is, for example, if you are going for a polio drive, then the life of the children that you are saving. So these are also have to be taken care of. Now, however, when we are talking about cost and benefit, what are the specific aspects that have to be included? Now, the payment to the suppliers, what will you include in the cost? The payment to suppliers has to be included. The accounting depreciation has to be ignored because it will lead to the double counting of the capital. So you don't include the depreciation; it is not a cash item. The interest and capital charges should be ignored, as the same is represented by a discount factor for which the it will be we are going to discount that particular cash. So interest and capital charges you are going to discount. The capital gain again should be ignored because they represent a change in the market discount rate or the NPV. Will just shortly talk about that. Then you have heard all the cost and benefit that are due to the project and policy, right? Due to the project and policy should be included along with the opportunity cost and resources that likely to be used by the particular project. So that you have to ignore. And so basically, you take into account only those costs and those benefits that are directly attributable to the project only. So we'll talk about those things. Now, the fourth step is predict the impact quantitatively over the life of the project. How do you do that? Now, how this thing is going to whether it is going to have very long time horizon, the relationship between the various variables like the input and output, these things have to be studied, how it is going to be impacted. Then you talk about monetizing. Basically, what I mean to say is put a monetary value on all these impacts. Okay. So when we talk about the putting the monetary value, basically we talk about the quantifying the cost as well as the benefit. So basically, whatever cost we are incurring, there could be direct cost, indirect cost. That could be like we talked about, the incremental cost could be the private cost, could be the externalities. Similarly, the benefits could be the private benefit as well as the externalities. So when we talk about the monetizing, basically I'm putting a monetary value on all these things. Then you have to actually compute the benefit and the cost to the you have to do the NPV calculation here. Now, when we talk about this NPV calculation, if you remember, if you remember, we'll talk about this thing, the NPV, which we discussed in the previous class. If you remember the formula, it was this. NPV was equal to the sum of T is equal to 1 to n period, the cash flow happening at time T, discount factor K to the power T minus C0, which indicated the cost. Now here we did not do the time value calculation because that was a scenario where we're talking about only cost benefit analysis, and we had simplified our life by assuming that all the investment is being done here, all the expenditures are being done at time 0. So if I put it on this kind of a timeline, this is my time 0, which is present time, and these are the times where my benefit was accruing to me. Now, this is n period. Now, these are the time frame when the benefit was accruing to me, and this is the time when the cost was made. Now, that is why all these benefits were discounted at K and were brought to this point of time, and we computed the present value here. Then we compared this with this. So that was pure cost benefit analysis. But here we are looking at something called the social cost benefit analysis, and here we can have projects where the investment is not happening at one point of time. So for example, if you look at this particular timeline, you can have investments here, you can have investments here, you can also have investments here, meaning that not just the benefits which are coming at different time frames, you also have cost which is also happening different time frames. So then you need to modify this formula where you just don't put the single investment here. Here also you put the present value of the to the power n, whatever investments you are making in whichever year. So yeah, that will be the investment. Here I'm talking about the investment divided by the discounting factor to the power t. So here, how will I distinguish now between this and this? So here, let me make it the benefit. Let me make it the benefit. The benefit that is accruing to me. So let me explain this formula to you. This will be the NPV. When we're talking about a social project, the NPV is basically the present value of all the benefits minus the present value of all the cost. So here purposefully I have made cash flow as B. So basically I will find out the present value of all the benefits, that is because I've already translated the benefit into the monetary terms. So these are become the cash flows. So the benefits that are accruing to me through cash, I'll discount them to present value, to the present time, using a particular discount rate that is called K, and using appropriate T here. If I'm talking about the 5th year, yeah, T value will be 5. If I'm talking about the 7th year, T value will be 7. Accordingly, we'll do this repetition of calculations till n period and sum it up. So we get the present value of benefits. Similarly, you have, suppose there are several costs happening at several points of time. So you again have translated the cost into monetary value. So suppose you are investing at 0.1, 0.3, 0.5. So you have to sum it up 3 times. Once for cost at time 1, then second time cost at time 3, and then third time cost at time 5. And then again use the same discount rate to compute the present value of the cost. Now this is the present value of your benefit, the first term, and the second term is the present value of your cost. So the in fact, if the present value of your benefit exceeds the present value of your cost, then the NPV is positive. If the NPV is positive, when the present value of cost exceeds the present value of the benefit exceeds the cost, the NPV will be positive and you accept the project. If this is negative and lesser, the present value of benefit is lesser than the cost, then your NPV will be negative and you reject the project. If these two are same, then obviously there is no point investing in the particular project. Now then you do something called a sensitivity analysis. Now what is sensitivity analysis? Sensitivity analysis is changing the parameters in a particular model and recalculating the results. Now here you see, when we're talking about how sensitive is your formulation or your model for calculating the SCBA to a particular change in the variable. What can change here? There are several things that can change here. Now, see, when we're talking about future, everything is, though we're talking about now certain cash flow, but please imagine that when we're talking about benefit after 10 years, nobody actually knows. For example, if you're constructing a highway, the highway is going to last for 50 years. Now, what is the benefit you're going to get out of it after 40 years? It's very difficult to monetize it. Now, you have put a value, some value for the 40th year, but there is something goes wrong. Suppose then, let us say there is an earthquake and the road is damaged. Now, which means there is a change in your model here regarding the benefit that you're going to get from 40th year onwards. So, there is a change there. Similar to the amount is the cost. Suppose you will have unseen, unforeseen cost escalation. So that is a variable that can change. The variable which is very susceptible to change is the K, the discount factor. This K is very much dependent on the market interest rate. Suppose that changes, then your discount rate also changes. And something that will change is the life of your project. Now, if you are just like I said, we have constructed a road, and we assume that it will last for 50 years. But do you know that an earthquake will not strike in 5 years? So the n is also susceptible to change. So my point is, if you change these variables, then you recalculate what will be the positive NPV, impact on the NPV. So these kind of changing the various input variables and recalculating the resultant NPV is known as the sensitivity analysis. And this sensitivity analysis is important due to the uncertainty that is associated with the social projects or the projects that are meant for the public goods. And see, because common sense tells us that if you don't take into account this sensitivity analysis, you might end up investing in a project which is not good for the society. So if your sensitivity analysis tells you that, well, even in spite of all these changes, you still can experience some kind of a benefit for the society, then you have to invest. So the last step in your social cost benefit analysis is performing a sensitivity analysis by appropriately changing in the input variables and looking at what is happening to the resultant NPV. So having said this, we now talk about the measurement, the various kinds of measures that we can talk about, the measurement techniques, the various measurement techniques that are there. Number one could be your, let us say, the what are the various valuation methods. Now, one is maybe, let us say, the correcting the market price for distortions. The competitive see the in the market, if it is there are no imperfections, then you can say that the market is pricing the this thing, I mean the commodity appropriately. But the competitive markets are always distorted by, let us say, the taxes, the subsidies, the goods. Suppose you go to go to a hospital, a government hospital, and avail a particular treatment for a particular disease, and you go to a private hospital and avail I mean the treatment for the same, you see there is a huge differential between the prices. So there could be several distortions in the market prices, so that you can correct. Distortions can be caused by the taxes, distortions can be caused by the various subsidies that the government is giving to us. The best thing that you can observe is, let us say, the prices of the petroleum products. Okay, so there is a huge level of taxing there. There is the continuously there is the subsidies has been withdrawn from that. So that is one aspect. How do you do valuation? By correcting the market prices. The second method how you can do is the revealed preference method. Now, in the revealed preference method, there are certain things that you cannot actually observe the prices of these things. I mean, certain things that directly the price of the product are not visible. So, for example, you don't have a market for them. For example, whether let us say you are producing in an environment friendly way, okay, and your factory is treating the waste material before it is being discharged, so discharged to the water body, and there is another factory which is not doing the same. Okay, so the point is how the consumers will treat the product of the factory A vis-a-vis the factory B. So these kind of things are not explicitly visible in terms of the market prices, but this, you can do that by something called a revealed market preference method, how the consumers look at that particular thing. So there are several methods available for that. You can look at your course material, these are available. You can have a stated preference method. In a stated preference method, it will use specially constructed questionnaire to talk about the project or the policy instead of using the indirect observation method. Okay, so you can adopt a questionnaire where you will explicitly ask the clients what should be the pricing of these things, how should it would be it should be evaluated. So that can help you in by getting the stated preference method. Then you can have the benefit transfer method as well. In the benefit transfer method, the information, I mean, that has already, there are several studies that have been done in that particular area. So you can use that particular thing, I mean the information available in used in that particular study to be applied to your particular project. So you can have this benefit transfer method from one to the other as well. So these are some of the methods how we can evaluate or you can value the projects. So so that your social cost benefit analysis will be completed through that, because there is no direct method of valuing these things when we are talking about the public goods. So I hope now that ends your discussion for the social cost benefit analysis. Thank you.